Friends, how many of you agree with me that change is the only constant in the world and every human being is directed to handle it? If you agree with me, please raise your hands or type yes on the chat box. Thank you. Thank you very much. So how many of you agree with me that in the modern educational curriculum, none of us are taught how to handle, how to adapt, how to face changes in the personal, professional, and social life? How many of you agree with me? If you agree with me, just type yes on the chat box or just raise your hands. Thank you very much, my friends. I welcome each one of you for this very premium talk show on the subject of sales mastery. And today's master class is on the subject of the change management. And we have the august presence of a person whom I really revere and consider as a role model in many ways, because he's a multifaceted personality. And I will introduce him shortly. And it's none other than Dr. Mukesh Gupta. Before I introduce the chief guest or the guest of the program who's going to share us his viewpoints in this master class, I would like to acknowledge each one of you who's viewing this particular talk show, either on the live Facebook or on live YouTube, or in any other social media platform where you are finding this particular talk show being broadcast. I want to acknowledge you that each one of you who is watching this is among that rare 10% of the world's population who understands and appreciates the importance of constant personal development, which in my view is a very crucial factor to adapt or to embrace the topic of the day, the change management. Friends, after this, sincere acknowledgement to all of you, and I request all of you to continuously be there till the end, because in the next 1 hour, you're going to get some nuggets of wisdom from Dr. Mukesh Gupta during my conversation with him. Now let me have the honor of and the pleasure of introducing Dr. Mukesh Gupta. Dr. Mukesh Gupta, as all of you know, is a world-famous doctor. He's an MD, DNB, PG, DPC, obstetrician and gynecologist. This is his medical qualification. And not only that, he's also many people are good in studies, but how good are you in practice is equally important. How many of you agree with me? And I know from the reputation that Dr. Mukesh Gupta has, that he's not only good in his knowledge, skill, but also in his attitude, which in my opinion is more important than sometimes even the skill and the knowledge. And apart from that, he's an avid learner. He has got a huge hunger for knowledge. And he's always there contributing in various social causes and also in the field of education. And he has done his IIM Calcutta alumni in the subject of strategic management. And I have had the pleasure of hearing him, listening him, and learning from him on this subject, which I'm sure each one of you will learn something during this next 1 hour talk. And what I also love about Dr. Mukesh Gupta is his inherent quality to take responsibility for a social cause, and also for furthering his field of specialty of medicine or in other place. Like in that role, he has been the president of the Association of Medical Consultants Mumbai. He has been the past president of Association of Fellow Gynecologists Mumbai. He's an emerging star of medicine's Indian Medical Association. And he's got other achievements and accomplishments, which shows his basic innate quality and his contributory traits in his personality. He has been a Young Achievers Award Excellence in Healthcare, Young Achievers Award in Children's Academy Group. He's been a president of the Lions Club of Malad Borivali in the year 2020 to 2021. But why I'm consciously reading out this well-deserved accomplishments of Dr. Gupta is for each of you to understand that whatever he speaks from not only his rich knowledge and skill, but also from his rich experience as a philanthropist and also as a person who's a social contributor. And friends, after this introduction, let me give you a small context behind why are we doing this particular show. We've done more than about 24 episodes of this particular Sales Mastery Talk Show, wherein we have had masterclass on various subjects. And this has been a sequel to the book which I launched, which I wrote and authored, called The Sales Master, 21 Key Principles to Win the Game of Life and Selling. And this particular book was basically written with the sole objective of making the fellow human beings understand the importance of selling, persuasion, and influence. Because unfortunately, in our country and the world around, the word salesmanship is highly discounted. And I, for one, believe that because of this discounting, many of the fellow human beings don't learn, understand, and study this important skill, which makes them lose out on life. Because selling is the most important life skill, most important business skill, and it's a learnable skill. Nobody is born with that skill. And in this book of the Sales Mastery, I've actually interviewed 21 very, very successful people from different faculties. They were entrepreneurs, they were consultants, they were advocates, they were chartered accountants, they were even doctors and lawyers, and everybody who were very, very successful ultimately pointed out that what really helped them was their ability to influence, persuade, and sell their thoughts and point of view to their clients, to their associates, and to the team. So ultimately, this is the basic objective. And as I was discussing with Dr. Mukesh before this talk show, friends, I want people to go through this entire series of Sales Mastery Talk Show, so that we want to encourage the young youth of India to learn from these well-accomplished, successful people. Because as they say, success leaves cues. So if you know what has been the reason for the success of these accomplished people from different fields, it becomes easy for you to adapt it, learn it, understand it, implement it in your life, and thereby become successful. But our objective as fellow Indians is to ensure that we all take up entrepreneurship. And because for us to take back our country back to the golden age, because India was the golden, it's called the Sone Ki Chidi of the world for almost about 15 centuries. And then we lost out in the last 250, 300 years when we were dominated by the Britishers. But it is time for us to again regain our status as the #1 economy in the world, as the Sone Ki Chidi of the world, the golden land. And I was, as I was sharing with Dr. Mukesh, that through such talk shows, through such inspiring personalities like Dr. Mukesh, we will be able to give the youth the right pathway, the right concepts, the right distinctions, the right understanding of how to become excellent and a global level personalities in their respective field, and thereby take us back into our golden era age for this motherland of ours. Okay, friends, with this context, let us straight away, let me first welcome Dr. Mukesh Gupta. Hello, Mukesh, thank you very much for taking out your valuable time from your busy practice and your various other responsibilities. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for inviting me in your show. And I'm sure there is a lot of things that I will learn while interacting with you rather than me giving information only.
That is your humility, sir. Absolutely. So friends, I'll start with the first question. So, Mukesh, I know you have been a very successful person in all areas of life. You know, you have been successful in your career, in your academic career. You have been very successful as a doctor. You have been very successful as a person who contributes to society. Because myself and Dr. Mukesh, we are in the same society, and he's taken up the responsibility of one of the management committees, and he started immediately making an impact on that as well. So they say the rate of change is given by the rate of change in information, technology, and competition. And the change in the last couple of decades or last decade has been so phenomenal that this world, which was already VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, has gone into a tailspin. And I for one believe, because as a trainer, teacher, and as a coach, I have found many people not able to adapt to it. So I wanted your initial comments on this concept of change and your few tips on how you managed change so successfully in your life.
So, first of all, I would really like to thank you for inviting me on your show. And I'm sure that people who are watching this are going to gain a lot, because I was quite thoroughly impressed by your approach, that how can we bring about a difference, not immediate, but a long-lasting one in the minds of young, impressionable minds, children and youth, and how you can see to it that this impact stays forever. So today's topic, which you mentioned about change management and how to bring about this change and what are the concepts. So let me start with the answering of your first question. You mentioned, I just jotted it down, you mentioned rate of change is equal to information, technology, and competition. These are the three words you used: information, technology, and competition. Let's talk about rate of change. So I always say that the background is that we really need to change. Nobody likes change. So if we want to change, why do we need to change? So any organization or any individual, starting from individual or organization, unless we improve for betterment or unless we change, it is difficult for us to survive. And when we're talking about this change, so let's understand this word. I love to use this word: evolve or perish.
Yes.
If you do not get better, you're going to perish in whatever role that you're playing. Now, in this rapidly changing environment, if we want to look at the rate of change, so I was just trying to understand the rate of change, whether it's a financial world where they talk about rate of change as the change in the pricing, increase or decrease in the market, or the physicists who would talk about rate of change as momentum and of velocity. And when there is a rate of change of momentum, they call it impulse by definition. I'm talking a little science and the jargon, but I love the word impulse. You know why? Because if we change on impulse, as a psychologist, a psychology a professor would say impulsivity is changing without thinking. Okay, so when you're changing and you're trying to change for betterment, if we do not put good thought and information and knowledge, then the change will not be a positive change. It will be just a chance occurrence. So the first variable that you put was information. So unless there is good information and knowledge, we cannot bring about a good positive rate of change. So there must be some people who are in a stagnant state of life, some people who will be in an accelerated phase and the momentum is there, but they want to scale up. So either ways, unless there is good information knowledge, there is no point in rate of change. Second component you mentioned was about technology. And I strongly believe that it is essential point and essential lever in today's era for improvement. And if you want to scale up, you need to use technology, especially in the post. I always say BC and AD. BC before COVID, AD is the afterwards and aftermath of after COVID. And I would say AD is after digitalization. So BC is before COVID, AD is after digitalization in the present circumstances. So unless we use technology as a leverage, we will not be able to get a positive change. So we need to use a technology. So this is the second variable you talked about. And the third variable, correct me if I'm wrong, you talked about competition, right?
Yes, competition.
Yeah. So the third variable you talked about was competition. Now, again, competition. Now, this takes me back to my learning from strategy. So I had the opportunity to do my strategy management course from IIM Calcutta, and we had some tremendous, amazing professors like Professor Biswatho Saha, and so I would not get into that, but there was one very interesting introduction to one author which I was not very much aware about. I had just passing it. That's Michael Porter. Now, if you really, for all those young minds who really are interested to learn and understand about strategy and growth, read that article, What is Strategy by Michael Porter. And there he talks about competitive advantages. Now, if we do not look at the competitive environment around us, and if we are not creating that competitive distance between us and the others, then where is the advantage of leadership? And if we want to create that, we need to constantly improve our benchmark. And when we start improving our benchmark, we have to understand that sooner or later, everybody's going to catch up. So there's going to be imitation straddling and imitation repositioning to catch up with whatever you do. So we need to keep on changing and improving for that. So in simple words, you have nailed a formula, which I really love, Arunaagiri ji, where you have taken these three variables. And I really love this concept of using these three variables to improve the rate of change. So I think that's
Thank you very much. In fact, sir, you're absolutely right, because This particular formula, even I learned it in the last 3 years when I was preparing to deliver a course on this change management. And as you beautifully explained all these three distinctions, and it's a multiplication of all these three. So the change is tremendous in the current world. So I remember we were talking about this particular concept during our recent, when we did a training program for the
Doctors. Yeah.
consultants in Pune. We talked about a concept called as emotional intelligence, and also we talked about the concept of adaptability. So I want your input on these two concepts, which you explained so beautifully to me and to the gathering there. So your take on how important is emotional management and adaptability as a trait in a human being in the current era to adapt to the changing circumstances of the world.
Let me talk about adaptability. I strongly believe that, from time immemorial, whether Darwinism or Lamarckism, if you look at the species, all those species, it's not the strongest or the most intelligent species that survives. It is those who are able to adapt to the changing environment. It is those species that survive. So if you take the analogy from there, so all those individuals, whether it is a student or whether it is a professional, whether it is a entrepreneur or whether it is a medical professional, unless we adapt to the changing circumstances, which is extremely exposed to the whole world, that after this COVID era, there were few who perished and the few who survived, and he did well in spite of the changes in the the black swan event which has happened over. But still, if we understand this adaptability, ability to adapt to the new surroundings, is something which is actually one of the most important sought after trait when it comes to a person's ability to lead and even employability, for that matter. If somebody wants to employ someone, they would really want someone who's adaptable. Now, when we talk about adaptability, we have to differentiate it from adoptability. Now, when you adapt something and when you adopt something, adapt means you are trying to bring about those sequential positive change to adjust to the environment around. Whereas adopt, you're just adopting something, copy pasting something, where it may not necessarily be a proper training, but it is just about copy pasting because something has worked for someone, I'm just picking it up. Okay. Yeah. The difference between these two is that adaptability is temporary, but adaptability is perpetual. The ability of a person to adapt to the surrounding is going to be definitely a superior option rather than just adopting. So hence, for an organization to change the individual's ability to adapt, they need to amalgamate a series of changes and skill sets, not just in the way they function, but also the way they think. So adaptability is not just the physical form of changing, but also, I think, majorly, it is the mindset which needs to change in an individual. This is my take on adaptability.
Brilliant. Awesome. In fact, this is exactly leading to the next question, which I had, Dr. Mukesh, was this concept called as transformation. And friends, as you know, there is a correlation between change and transformation. Change sometimes can be reversed, but they say transformation is irreversible. And transformation is converting your limiting beliefs into liberating beliefs. And so, Dr. Mukesh, I want your take on this concept of transformation, because how important is transformation for us to keep on changing our beliefs, which are nothing but thoughts which you consider to be truth, in order for you to adapt, as you rightly beautifully put up, adaptability, ability to adapt is different from adopt. Okay, because adaptability requires you to change yourself in form, in time, and in sense as well. So I want your take on the importance of transformation in the change management.
So that's interesting. You know what? At the end of the session, some people will come up and say that these guys are talking about English dictionary and language more than anything else. But trust me, this is the root of our understanding of various principles, how we can utilize the knowledge that you gain from these things and implement in our day-to-day practice and get yourself enhanced and scaled up. So when you're talking about change and transformation, now when let's put it this way, my first belief would be the key to successful implementation of change management lies in the understanding of avoidance of coercive change decisions and choosing of empowerment of the whole team, not just an individual, to be successful transformational agents. In
Yes.
simple words, I'm going to explain this. I know this is a little heavy jargon. Somebody who would want to think, you can go back and rewind, because that's the advantage of having these, Facebook lives. You can go back and rewind and see again. But when I'm saying these words, I'm trying to differentiate these two words of change and transformation. So by dictionary, change means to alter or substitute or just replace. Okay. But transformation is defined by a marked change or actual metamorphosis, like a pupa into a butterfly. Okay. Or like a cell, when it is attacked by a COVID virus, it changes its whole structure and metamorphoses into a different kind of structure and produces more viruses. So transformation is more about the end product. So in business settings, if you want to apply this change and transformation, I would say the change implies more to the process and transformation more to the outcomes, the end result. Okay, you need to look at the final outcome, not just in conceptual form, but also physical and output form. So change is a response to the external influences. Okay.
Yes.
And sometimes you have to keep changing and modifying day to day and achieve that. So it's a journey as well as destination. Whereas transformation is about modifying your core beliefs and long-term behaviors, and sometimes in a very profound way, and to achieve the desired result. So you have to keep on changing, and then you have to reach to the stage where you're transformed perpetually and permanently. Now, mastering the change may enable companies to keep up with the fast shifting consumer expectations and etc. But a deliberate, planned transformation, okay, it's something which you plan it that, okay, I want to reach this end point. And when you do it deliberately and with a plan and with a strategy, it redefines our whole organization. And this is how, or in a form that, okay, this is how my successful organization look like or function like. And that would be, amazing. So let me give you an example of the concept of disruptive innovation. When we talk about disruptive innovation, people think that everything is disrupted and changed and metamorphosed. Now, I would like to correct here. It has been very loosely used. Very well. I went back and read the article by Professor Clayton Christensen of Harvard Business School. And if you go through that, you have to understand that the story that that article mentions and the explanation or summary of that is that how a small company competes with an upmarket organization, a smaller business competes with a larger, mega, business house, and it starts with a lower level. And when they start at the lower level, so it's basically not considered as a competition for the larger house, because they don't want to enter into that. And then gradually they capture that lower end market, and then gradually they metamorphose and start growing into a better business, and then they eat up in the larger pie. And then because people are so used to that particular thing, so in healthcare, for example, a smaller setup versus a corporate setup, the corporate setup may not be interested in a smaller OPD practice or smaller this, but whereas gradually, almost say maybe huge amount, 60 to 70% of the people may choose a smaller setup and not go to a higher setup or tertiary care, because most of the needs are taken care at the level. And this is how you have to understand the process which can empower an aspiring entrepreneur to seek opportunities and disrupt the ecosystem where they now gradually become big is disruptive innovation. And that involves a constant change leading to a transformation.
Absolutely. Brilliant. So as you said, I totally get your point. Information is inside out, and change can be induced from outside in. And as you rightly said, it is the inner transformation which is ultimately going to lead you to really take care of this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. Very well said. So here I want to get in this next distinction, which I have seen every successful person like you always take up. In fact, all the 24, 25 people who have been in the sales mastery program, I could see one common trait was their taking that total responsibility and ownership for their life. They believe in one statement: I am solely and totally responsible for everything in my life. And I can see that in you as well. So your comment on that particular aspect, because that has got a link to the change management. How do you adapt to the change management? So your comment.
Okay, so I always feel that, taking the responsibility is something, unless an individual accepts that they want to change and owns up to that decision, they will be perpetually resistant to change. Okay, so let's put a little science. Let's put a little science and background into it. Okay. The science includes here when we're talking about change management and responsibility. Let me give a reference of Malcolm Knowles and the person who introduced the concept of andragogy. Andragogy is how you train adults. Now, when we're talking about change management in organization, it is huge number of adults whom we are trying to change. And there are some principles and there are some assumptions that he has made when he talked about how to train adults. And now when we bring about this change, we need to actually train them to take that. One of the primary and the first principle he talked about, or the concept that he talked about, was that for an adult learner, they should be committed and involved in the planning and evaluation of the change or the change behavior. If you do not involve them, it's out. So unless they own up the responsibility that they want to do this, it will not happen. Second thing is that it's a self-driven agenda with the concept. So he talks about assumption that every adult who wants to bring about the change has a self-concept and a readiness to learn. So these are a couple of principles out of the 5 principles in that article, I remember. Now, when he talks about these concepts, you have to remember that unless someone owns up themselves, it is, it is easier. But if you coercively force someone to change, without accepting the responsibility, it may not be something which will be easy. Okay. Am I audible?
Yeah, very much. Absolutely, sir.
Okay, I thought something is missed. So, so in medical fraternity, just give me one moment. I think something is okay. So in medical fraternity, there is a constant endeavor to reduce the errors and omissions. Okay.
Yes.
And when you reduce errors and omissions in an organization or a manufacturing unit or in a healthcare setup, only then can the outcome be better. So if I have to look at standard of care in the patient, I have to reduce the errors and omissions. And when I'm reducing the errors and omissions, one of the primary thing which comes on the mind is that who is responsible for it?
Yes.
So sometimes it is that last mile worker who is responsible for it. But there is a concept of vicarious liability. In healthcare, there is a vicarious liability. Kisi ki bhi galti hone do. Anyone who's making a fault, it doesn't really matter. The ownership is ours. So we have to do that. And with this concept, if we remember that sometimes claiming of the ownership saves a lot of time and efforts to debate and argue, even if it was a collective decision or even if it was an individual hubris of one of the participants in the team. But still, if you just own up and move ahead, you will bring about change faster and the outcome will be better. So in simple words, whenever you are looking to take the responsibility, you will always have a stronger and a better outcome. And if you leave it, like that story, Raste ka patthar main kyun uthaun, somebody else will take care. Obviously, the change will not happen.
Absolutely, sir. You said it very beautifully. And ultimately, the onus stops at the top leader. And for an organization to be powerful, every individual in the organization should take total responsibility. And I've seen this, Dr. Mukesh, that whichever organization has got this type of culture would be able to adapt to any challenges. In fact, I run a company called Pacific Trends, and this has been one important attribute and trait of which we have been trying to inculcate. I wouldn't say that we have 100% imbibement in each individual, but it is there in the majority, and that is what helped us to, as you rightly said, the black swan event of COVID, which almost annihilated most of the SMEs. We were helped because of this concept of total responsibility and ownership, as you beautifully put it. And in any situation, any change, if you want to face it, total responsibility is a factor. In this, I just, when you were talking about the medical field, I'm sure you must have read a book called Checklist by Atul Gawande. And it is today considered in the management.
The Checklist Manifesto by Dr. Atul Gawande. He was a Surgeon General of United States of America. And it's an amazing book.
And I want you to just comment and give a little understanding to the youth how important it is to make a checklist and to follow that in order to ensure that you don't make those small errors, which is in today's world, it is not acceptable. Yeah. Your comment.
I'll tell you a small story from the medical fraternity. Sometimes the learnings that we get from interdisciplinarity interactions like what we're having now, it really helps us to understand how other systems work. Now, this story comes from that interdisciplinarity. So once there was this, there was this pilot and his partner who had faced this problem where the partner was supposed to be given anesthesia for some surgery. and suddenly for some reason she could not be intubated. Now intubation is, before the surgery you intubate, and then you shift her to artificial support system for oxygenation, and only then can we give anesthesia and then operate. But unfortunately, they could not put the tube in. Now this tube is necessary to give oxygen to the lungs, and it got stuck. One person tried, another person tried, and then everybody were waiting what to do. There were at least, n number of doctors in the room, but nobody could take the action. But hold on, even a first, second year resident of surgery department or anesthesia department, if they're asked that if you're stuck up with the situation, what will you do? They say tracheostomy. We just open and make a hole and save the woman. But unfortunately, that did not happen. You know why? Because of indecisiveness at that moment of time. So when you create a standardized process and you standardize checklist, you know that if this doesn't work, this has to be the next step. This doesn't work, this has to be the next step. And now I will tell you one more amazing story. A single piece of paper, a single sheet of paper with a huge list of, checklist, okay, was found to be the most cost-effective and highly efficient tool to save human life. And you know what was that? It was a WHO checklist of pre-operative preparations. What are the things that you need to see before surgery? The checklist for the anesthetist, the checklist for the OT nurse, and the checklist for the doctor. And so simple one sheet of paper saved so many lives. So sometimes this checklist can be made for an organization, and you can make a checklist even, when you're running, okay, these are the kind of goals that I want to achieve, and these are the steps that I want to take, and these are the implementation strategies that I want to take. How do you?
Absolutely, sir. In fact, the young entrepreneurs for whom we are this particular show has been directed to, remember this point. These small actions can save you a lot of challenges, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of losses in business. Because Dr. you must be knowing the statistics. Out of the 10 new businesses which start off, 8 of them closed down the first 3 years, which is what is a real, very bleak thing. And these talk show, especially with successful people like you, is basically to help these youth not commit those small mistakes, which can be quite challenging or quite a death knell for any enterprise.
Can I add a line here?
Now I want to go to the next.
Can I add a line?
Yes, please.
So when we talk about strategy management, one of the most important component of strategy creation is not what to do, but Michael Porter says you have to do trade-offs and decide what not to do.
What to do. Yeah, absolutely. That is equally important. In fact, so I was just doing a time management seminar. I said sometimes it is not important what the priority work, but you have to resist from not getting deviated or distracted for doing things which you should not be doing, which is the reason why most of the people have a messed up time management practice, because they tend to do all those things which is not required, as you beautifully put it. So I wanted to ask you one more thing. The environment, the culture is very important. And as I can see in your team, as I can see in many of the successful teams, culture sometimes overtakes strategy. And culture is nothing but the way you do things. And even this concept which we talked about, adaptability or total responsibility or total ownership, all of them come within the parlance of culture. But how important, Dr. Saab, do you think culture is vis-a-vis strategy?
Okay, so I always think that the culture of an organization or the identity of an organization is under constant stress from various forces from all around. Okay, so let's start with an individual and then move on to the organization. For an individual, when the individual's behavior is happening, it is mainly governed by the nature and the nurture of the background that they have, the culture that they've been brought up. So whether it is, the childhood exposures of learning, or whether it is the youth phase of aspirations, or whether it is the adult phase of experience of various jobs and workplace environment, these actually build up the attitude, perception, and the behavior of an individual. Now, similar to that, an organization also has a culture or an identity. It also has an intrinsic and extrinsic factor. So intrinsic factor for an individual is his personality traits or his, primary primary core behavior traits. He may be a personality who's a leader, or he may be a personality who's a doer, he may be a personality who's a thinker. So it all depends on what that person is made up. Similarly, organization is actually a collection of such people. So organization also has an intrinsic behavioral, intrinsic factors and extrinsic factors. The culture is created when it comes to extrinsic factors. It is the ecosystem of competitiveness which is around. What are the various benchmark of the services and the facilities that are created by the people around? It is also about what is the perceived, USVs or core competencies of your organization by the customer. Because when the customer perceives you to be something, the organization has to live up to that image. So the culture has to be of that way. So ultimately, there is a lot of extrinsic influences on the culture of the organization. Whereas the intrinsic comes from the various different systems and processes, the original goals and the mission, vision statement that was created, and the strategies that being laid down at the beginning of the organization. All those factors create those intrinsic factors. Now add to that the interaction between individual personalities and their nuances of relationship management between the people working inside will create the environment and the culture.
Absolutely.
This has a huge influence on the outcome.
Yes.
Especially when someone, for example, comes from outside and is brought in to bring about some change, there is going to be a lot of stretch and pull and push all around. But what we have to remember is that whoever is a change manager or whoever is the person who wants to bring him, they have to be clear about the strategies towards the goals that they want to achieve for the organization. And if that is in mind, then so the original intended strategy cannot be forgotten. Of course, you need to keep on changing and adapting to the situation. But if you are in alignment with that, then probably things will fall in place. Here, there is another concept I would like to throw in for people who are listening: the parallel thinking versus adversarial thinking. In an organization, some people will have, two people will not think alike, never, ever. Okay. But if they have an aligned goal, it is a parallel thinking. So your outcome is favorable. Whereas if two people are competing with each other and trying to just show each other down, it is inconsequential. Meaning there is no outcome and the only intention is to show each other down. That is adversarial thinking. So our intention is that all the stakeholders have to be trained and made to understand about the concept of parallel thinking and achieving the desired direction, so that even if they think differently, the outcome is the betterment of the organization.
Absolutely right. In fact, sir, I also recently got present to when I was writing for my 5th book on negotiation, that as you rightly said, the first thing for all of the members of an organization is the mission of the company. Second should be the team. And third should be the individual. And if they maintain this prioritization, that you need to first ensure that the mission of the organization is taken care of, as you said, the overall goal of the organization. Then, of course, the team's welfare, and last should be the individual. If it, many of the organizations which go topsy-turvy is mainly because they reverse this. Some individual becomes important and he takes all the prominence and he takes all his self-interest and then he messes up with the mission. Very, very true. But I want to ask you this, because as this is addressed towards the young youth and the young entrepreneurs, whom we want them to start the enterprise, because understandably, India has got number of thriving small enterprises. We cannot give employment to the umpteen number of youth, which is going to flood the job market. And India very shortly is going to become the most populous country in the world. So I wanted your inputs to this youth, because running a hospital is also running like a business. It is a business. Okay, you have your competencies, but running a hospital is also running an entrepreneurship. So what would be the tips you would give to the youth who want to start their own enterprise?
Okay, so it's a kind of a concluding remark. This is the last thing I will try to frame up everything, or we are having more conversation there. But if you want me to say the tips, I always say that whenever someone talks about the take-home messages that you should carry, I have a very strong belief. And if you ask me my success mantra, I say that there are some aspects of life skills that everyone should develop and learn. Okay. The first one I would always say is the IQ. If you do not carry that intelligence quotient, you'll never be. You cannot copy paste things. You cannot just pick up someone's successful formula and just try to implement and become successful. No, Imitation is not going to lead you anywhere. So you need to be a voracious reader and acquire as much knowledge as possible for whatever thing or whatever endeavor we are entering into. Okay, if you're a hospital or a doctor or a student or an entrepreneur, whatever. So for an entrepreneur, they need to gather huge amount of information. That's the IQ. That's the intelligent quotient, and that's where the knowledge comes in. Second is the behavioral quotient, meaning you should know your sets of skills, how to implement your knowledge into that behavior or that skills. So if you are starting, you have the information, you have everything, but there is a knowledge action gap. If you do not have that action happening, then it is not going to help. So you have to develop that appropriate skill set of interacting and communicating and bringing about the change and actually delivering the service or the product to the expectation of the customer. So if you're not able to have that behavioral quotient of how you behave with your team members and your customers, you'll never be able to be successful. Then comes the third, and I say the central pillar of the whole approach to the business, and I call it the spiritual quotient.
Yes.
And the most important component of spiritual quotient is the ethical behavior. If you do not have the ethics, street smartness and jugaad is temporary. Ethics is permanent and perpetual. So if you do not understand healthcare, we have an ethical framework where we give, 4 pillars of ethicality: autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice. And you need to see to it that everybody is given an opportunity of what they want. Then you have to see to it that when we talk about beneficence, it is our duty to do the right thing for our customer or patient or whatever. Non-maleficence means first, do no harm. Do not cause any harm to anyone and not to do the bad. And lastly, justice means there has to be equitable. You cannot be biased to some and others. So when you have this ethical pillar, it'll work. So this is a central pillar. So I talked about IQ, I talked about BQ, I talked about the SQ. And then comes the EQ, the emotional quotient. Now, emotional quotient is our background for good communication. Although the emotional quotient has got 4 pillars like Daniel Goleman talks about. Daniel Goleman talks about the 4 pillars: self-awareness, self-management. These are the 2 things for self, where we are managing ourselves. And then comes the other 2 components, that is empathy, or having the social understanding of what the other person wants you to be behaving or what expects from you. And then comes your skillful behavior. So in simple words, if you want to achieve this, you need to have the empathy and ability to communicate to your customers or your patients in an appropriate way. If you're not able to communicate well, then everything is lost, right? So this is the 4th thing. And the last skill set which I would love to add is something which I first learned from you, and I will give you the credit. Although I did not have a name to that thought, and I gave the name to that thought when we had this conversation of the AQ, the adaptability quotient. Okay. Now, what is this adaptability quotient? The ability to adapt to the situation, as I talked a little while back. And for people who have joined in late, please watch the video afterwards and see what we talked about adaptability and adaptability. So the 5th is the AQ. I always say, if we do not change with the change, we will perish. If we change with the change, we will survive. But if we bring about the change in the positive direction, then we'll be called as leaders. So I think these 5 things, that to summarize: IQ, BQ, SQ, EQ, and AQ.
Oh, awesome. I think a brilliant, exposition of the entire thing, which any successful human being needs to learn, because I'm sure these are all learnable skills. Nobody is born with these skills. This has to be consciously understood, comprehended. You need to have awareness and take it up. And also, as you rightly said, they always say that your spiritual quotient, your spiritual mooring is a very, very important plank on which the others stand. And we as Indians, we can be really proud of that. India is and will always remain to be the spiritual capital of the world. And so we all can be blessed to be born in this great country. And all that we need to do is get into our moorings and understand it. So I would like to just summarize what you said very beautifully from that serenity prayer. It says that, God gave me the a serenity to accept things which I cannot change, have the courage to change the thing which I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I think the serenity prayer is one which we normally keep on using it. So your comment on that serenity prayer, especially for the youth of the nation, because this is something which encompasses, as already said, SQ, EQ, and AQ also.
unless we know that there is a difference between what we aspire to achieve
Right.
and what we actually are going to achieve, and when we are trying to achieve, how we try to achieve it in a way that we have to not only look at our personal development and personal benefit, not only the development of the business or the organizational development, but we have to look at the society at large. Now,
Yes.
if we are not looking at that component where you are looking at the gain for all the four, then the change will not be, enough or
Yes.
sufficient for all of us.
Absolutely. And also, I last, but as an authority on medicine, I want you to give a comment on one more concept or distinction which we as a company and we as a forum are dedicated to, is called holistic well-being. And we, for one, believe that we human beings are born with this body, which is a vehicle in the journey of life, and your quality of your life will depend upon the quality of this vehicle. And unfortunately, especially now that India has started growing economically, we will also go the US way, where people will go after money and they will sacrifice their body, mind, and soul development as well. And one stark example right now, which one of my mentors, whom I really used to revere, Rakesh Junjunwala, was worth about 40,000 crores. But at a young age, I would say relatively young age of 62, we lost him just because he didn't take care of his well-being, especially your physical well-being. So I want you to comment on this holistic well-being concept, and the concept which we have come out with is golden 1 hour, which says that every individual, every human being should consciously invest 1 hour per day to exercise this body, both for your body, mind, and soul. And Dr. Saab, I'm very proud to say that in the last 2 years, we have covered almost 1,500 families across India and abroad. And even today, every day morning from 6:30 to 7:30, 7:45, we have a ritual, or we have a practice session where we help people learn these elements and practice these elements so that they can keep this particular sophisticated machinery called body, mind, and soul in its peak form. How important is it, Dr. Saab, as a person who has kept yourself very busy, because I have seen you walking very religiously every day morning. But I feel that many of the youth in pursuit of their material success might miss out this. So I wanted them to learn from an authority like you on this important aspect.
It is interesting. This is something which is very close to my heart, and I always talk about the concept of positive health, not just absence of disease and infirmity, but also your ability to fight. Like in COVID, if you have the immunity, you will not land up it. So by God's grace, I have sailed through those 2.5 years, although in spite of the fact that I was every day in the hospital, we were able to save ourselves from landing up with COVID infection. Because not just about not landing up with infection, but it's also about having the immunity and the ability to not land up with, the disease. So prevention is always better than cure. But when we talk about holistic being, the primary definition of WHO for health for all, or health, incorporates not just the physical health, but also
Yes.
emotional and psychological well-being. Here comes your mind, body, and soul concept. Okay, so I'm going to go one
Yes.
step at a time. Of course, you need to work on your body. If you don't give time to yourself, then you have not really done that. So when you referred to Rakesh Junjunwala, so Mr. Rakesh Junjunwala, we had invited him in one of our conferences, and we had asked him that you have achieved so much in life. And we asked him if there was one thing that he would like to change. We're talking about change management, right? So what would it be? And he says that I did not pay attention to my life and my health.
Yeah.
And I was behaving as if I'm invincible and all my life. So towards the later stage of his life, he actually, so I'm not going to get into the diseases that he had because of my medical access, but what is important is that he did mention that he repents that he had not paid good attention to his health. So even if you make crores of rupees, if your health is not with you, it's of no much use. Now there is another component I'm going to add up. So when you're talking about Rakesh Junjunwala, he's called the Warren Buffet of India. So let's talk about Warren Buffet. Okay, so I remember seeing this one interview in Bloomberg, and if I'm not mistaken, it was actually basically the interesting part was this. It was conducted by Charlie Rose, and he had done the interview of Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, and he talked about the time management. That how do we remove time for ourselves? We don't have time for ourselves, right? So we are busy people. The more successful you are, you think you're more busy. So to this, Bill Gates actually mentioned, and he gave a reference to asking for a black diary, which was in the pocket of Warren Buffett. He said, please look into this diary. And he actually asked Charlie Rose to remove it, and he checked the diary and it had empty pages.
Oh.
So Warren Buffett, one of the most sought after intellectual mind of investment, circles, he has an empty diary with hardly, appointments. I still remember that talk. He had hardly 3 or 4 appointments in the month of April, and he was saying that it will not be more than that. And the concept which came up from that, which I understood, was that Bill Gates mentioned that you need to give time to yourself. So the CEOs need to give time. And he gave an example that how he did it. And Warren Buffett said that he gives time for himself for reading and studying. Now, I would say that not just time for your personal development as in knowledge or your business sense, but also for your physical health. If you don't pay attention to your body, you will be not having that body to enjoy the money that you make. Okay. Lastly, the last component is emotional well-being. Okay. So when you talk about holistic, okay, the emotional well-being is an extremely, so our body is functioning, yes, but there is a lot of emotional dysregulation that happens because of the various changes in the environment and the stress and the anxiety. And this emotional well-being is a big challenge. And I always say that you need to try to balance your emotions, because remember, as a leader, as an entrepreneur, you are going to create a ripple effect down your whole organization. If you are emotionally dysregulated, angry, irritable, the whole organization will carry that emotion that day. Okay. And a calm and a composed, non-critical yet constructively advising leader will always be able to achieve more from the same team as compared to the arrogant and irritated and angry boss. So we need to understand this emotional dysregulation. And I'm going to end this conversation that this is not a new information that we are coming up with. This has been known from time immemorial to our Hindi scripture. And one of the most, I would say, one of my most loved book. Okay, I'm sorry to say this word book because I would call it Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So chapter 2, verse 15, it says, Yam hina vyathyante te, purusham purusar sabam, samadukham, samasukham, dhiram, somritatva kalpate. In this, Lord Krishna tells to Arjun that, O noblest amongst men, even at the extremes of happiness and distress, if you are able to manage yourself, then you are actually eligible for liberation. Meaning, out of the fact that you are so stressed up or so excited, maintain your calm and you will be able to achieve much more than what you were expecting. That is what I would like to say.
Brilliant. Absolutely. That's called the concept of equanimity and balance in life. Absolutely. And whether you are when you have huge success or huge challenges, if you can remain balanced, you will be able to manage the situation. And that's exactly what is happening right now. In the current world, I think as we are talking about change management, you may have a positive change, you may have a negative change, but if you are going to be equanimous and in the balanced state, you'll be able to enjoy both of them, or you may be able to go through both of them in a lot of equanimity. That was brilliant, a brilliant answer which you gave. And I never realized that we are almost at the end of it. We almost covered this 1 hour, and 1 hour just flew like this. And I can see, and so one more thing I want to appreciate was your energy, your enthusiasm, and your commitment, and you doing anything that you do with 100%. So I want your comment on this, because I, for one, as a trainer, teacher, coach, mentor, and entrepreneur, I know this is a very, very important quality. So how have you built it, and what's your secret of keeping it on? Energy, enthusiasm in whatever you do. So your comment.
So I think the emotions and the energy levels of the leaders which they exhibit, again, I'll use this word, it is contagious. Okay.
Yes.
So if you carry that level of energy, and if you carry that level of enthusiasm, okay, your team will actually start mimicking and behaving in that direction. So there is no argument on that. And now whether you can actually change yourself. Now there is one thing I'll tell you, that you need to remember that whatever response we give as a fight, fright, fear, immediately without thinking, comes from your from your limbic system. But the moment your past experiences and learning and attending such brilliant session with Dr. Arunaagiri, it gets imbibed and stored in your prefrontal cortex as a memory. So whenever you want to dig in and start picking up that, okay, I want to change myself, this connection can be validated at any age. So you can change your enthusiasm and energy levels if the thing that you're doing excites you and you're passionate about it. So if you want to do that, it is very much easily possible. And for me, I'll give you an example. In my hospital, what I do is I try to objectively implement by using some tools. So there are some interesting tools you can use to implement the energy levels or the action oriented behavior. So when you have an action oriented behavior, there was an interesting concept from John Adair. He was a British author, and he talked about dividing the action plan into individuals, teams, and the list of tasks, and then make a grid of these three and try to implement this. So unless there is a knowledge and action implementation, and if there is a gap, knowledge action gap, it's all done. So whatever your energy levels or your action oriented approach, if it is converted into actual action, only then will it be beneficial. So in simple words, last but not the least, remember that it is not just you individual who have to exhibit your strengths and your knowledge and your expertise, but it is that every last mile worker in the team and every individual from the team who has to participate. And every of those small block changes in the whole system is going to overall improve the outcome of your business or your work or your organization. Remember, boon boon se sagar bharta hai.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much. I think that was a beautiful final statement, Dr. Saab, that boon boon se sagar bharta hai, and you need to be energetic in whatever you do, and energy is contagious, and everything in life is energy. And if you can keep yourself in a peak energy, automatically you can achieve peak success in life. Dr. Saab, thank you very much for your invaluable nuggets of wisdom which you shared. And we covered so many aspects. We covered holistic well-being. We talked about emotional well-being. We talked about strategy in business. We talked about entrepreneurship. We talked about physical fitness. We talked about the concept of change. We talked about environment. We talked about culture. So many topics we could cover in just a matter of 1 hour. So once again, our heartfelt gratitude to you for taking out your time and sharing your unlimited knowledge. And one more thing I wanted to just share with all the youth. Dr. Mukesh Gupta's deep knowledge, information is because of his reading habit. You can make out how many authors he quoted, how many books he quoted, and with almost verbatim. That shows that reading is one habit which you just cannot avoid, because books are the frozen thoughts of great people. If you want to meet those great people, you may not be able to meet them physically. Some of them are not there in the physical form, but you can definitely meet them through their books. I'm sure Dr. Mukesh Gupta will agree with that reading is one of the very, very important habits, and then contemplating and reflecting and taking action on that. Okay. Your final comment on that, sir, because that is one habit which we want.
The final comment is always call for action. Okay. It is very easy to talk about improvement talk, and it is difficult to walk the improvement walk. So I always say that every individual organization should always look at how you can build up the ability of individual members to growth, and do not shy away from actually taking help from amazing trainers which are available to you. So we have an amazing author and coach here, and I have seen him in action. I have heard him in action. I have seen the people before and after the training and how they are. So I think there's a call for action here, that never shy away from actually trying to take help from professional coach to bring about the change which you are always dreaming of in an organization. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Awesome, sir. In fact, I remember a quote, knowing is not doing, doing is doing. That's exactly what Dr. Mukesh Gupta is talking about. You need to take action. So whatever you learned in this last 1 hour, make a note of it and get it into action. And friends, I want to thank all of you who are watching this. And my only request to you as your coach, mentor, and as your well-wisher is that from great people, from accomplished people like Dr. Mukesh Gupta, they are sharing with you those nuggets of wisdom. They say success leaves clues. So follow that clues and take it forward so that your journey can be faster with more momentum and acceleration, and you can achieve your life goal. And in the process, as I said, we in India can make our country back as the Sone ki Chidi of the world. So thank you very much. God bless you all. My request is please share this particular video if you see to as many people as possible. Let them learn from great people like Dr. Mukesh Gupta and thereby enrich themselves and enrich society and the world. So thank you very much, Dr. Once again, my last vote of thanks for you and my heartfelt gratitude for your time for this particular show. And we look forward to having more such conversation with you so that we can make a difference in the world. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless. Thank you. Thank you.